Opening shot, extreme close-up on a dry, cracked lip. The sound of ragged, desperate breathing fills the audio. The image blurs slightly, as if from heat haze and exhaustion. Voiceover, gravelly, age measured. History remembers the last stand, the final charge. The famous fall, the image cuts sharply to a slow, sweeping drone shot over the barren, sun-blasted hills of the Little Big Horn battlefield. Quiet, tense, ambient music begins to swell faintly. Voiceover, but what about the stand that came after? The men who did not fall in the valley but were left to wait. Powerful imagery. A vintage canteen, empty and bullet-creased. A single sagebrush plant trembling in a hot wind. The weathered page of a handwritten letter. The ink faded. Voiceover. For 36 hours, on a blistering Montana hilltop in June of 1876, survival wasn't measured in courage or bullets, but in drops of water. In the distance between a desperate ravine and a river held by enemy fire. In the sanity of the man next to you. Sound of a single, distant gunshot echoes. The music tightens. It is not Custer's story. This is the story from the hill. The story told not by generals, but by a survivor. Sergeant Stanislaus Roy of the 7th Cavalry put his truth to paper so we would know what it cost to endure. On screen, text appears as the voiceover speaks, stylized and stark. From the 1910 testimony of Stanislaus Roy, 7th Cavalry, Company a Survivor, final shot, a powerful direct-to-camera look from a reenactor portraying Sergeant Roy, his face etched with grim memory. He gives one slow, solemn nod, voiceover, now intimate as if speaking only to the viewer. Our thirst became extreme. We chewed grass to produce saliva. Private Cornelius Cowley went insane from thirst, and we were forced to tie him fast. The screen fades to black for a beat. The title appears in bold, stark text against the black. This is what happened. Title card appears with a weighty sound effect. 36 hours without water. The hilltop fight at the Little Big Horn. But before we begin, like and subscribe. Stanislaus Roy, who once served as a sergeant with the 7th Cavalry, bore a grave and personal knowledge. Having survived the engagement on the heights, his specific memories offer an essential viewpoint. In the year 1910, he set down his account in writing, which we will now review. I have received your recent correspondence concerning the actions near the Little Big Horn during June of 1876. While the many intervening years have obscured certain details, I will strive to give a truthful narration of my time with Company A. On June the 5th, our unit was enveloped by a fierce snowstorm between the Hart River and O'Fallon Creek, a cold of the most penetrating kind. I remember that the wagon train progressed only as far as the Powder River and did not continue onward to the Rosebud. We noted native burial sites located in a depression between Miles City and the Rosebud. This installation, Fort Keogh, lies close to where Major Reno ended his reconnaissance. In the area between this post and the Rosebud, we found low terrain where indigenous graves had been placed within the trees. The soldiers of G Troop pulled them down, looted them, and threw the remains into the Yellowstone. Several men remarked to Lieutenant McIntosh that G Troop might come to regret this deed. It is reported that when the forward movement commenced at midday on the 22nd, we departed a campsite in the woods about a mile east of where the Rosebud meets the river. We moved directly over the hill and reached the Rosebud some way from the crossing, forded the stream, and continued along its western side. This course implies General Custer took a trail now followed by the present road. It is widely accepted that Bob Jackson and Billy Cross did not cross at the position known as Fort A. No soldier remembers seeing them during the Valley engagement or on the western bank of the river. There existed some 50 yards of woodland upon the western shore near Fort A. Reno's advancing force was made up of companies G, A, and M in that sequence. After moving past the fort, we established a formation. While forming up, I heard multiple men cry out, "There goes Custer." He was seen upon the high ground to our right, on the opposite side of the river. We dismounted around 200 yards ahead of the trees, and our skirmish line advanced to its forward position. G was positioned on the right flank, A beside them, and M on the left. I am sure there was no woodland to the right of our formation. A number of indigenous warriors were within the timber in front of our right flank and delivered a slanting fire upon our line toward the southwest. The skirmish line stretched westward from the tip of the timber. I saw Charlie Reynolds, on foot and injured, holding a pistol and trying to follow the withdrawal. After my own horse was hit, the animal became uncontrollable and I could not steer him, yet he veered to the right and carried me to safety. We were commanded to fall back from the line. I went into the trees about 50 yards to retrieve my mount. I met Lieutenant Wallace, who was on horseback and leading G Troop out. When I inquired about my horse, he stated, "Take any horse you can find and leave this place." Everyone departed from the southern edge of the woodland. I believe that I remained on the skirmish line a full 20 minutes, firing approximately 20 rounds. Inside the timber, I witnessed Private John M. Gilbert coming out with 4 horses, one of them being mine. I got on a horse and followed the column, yelling at Gilbert to follow and hurry. I was behind Gilbert and among the very last to leave the trees. About 75 yards from the timber, I again observed Charlie Reynolds, dismounted and wounded, standing with his pistol held in a defiant manner. Shortly after, my horse was shot through the jaws just behind the mouth. He went down, then got up, and I climbed back on. My sling belt was knocked over my head in the fall, and I dropped my carbine, leaving me with only my sidearm. I reached the river safely, the water coming up to my horse's belly. I began immediately to climb the bluff. The horse was bleeding profusely, and I left him during the ascent. There was discussion that Reno would move to support Custer. I said to Captain Moylan, "Captain, I have no horse." He responded, "Well, get one." Roughly 10 minutes after reaching the top of the bluff, Captain Benteen arrived. Not long after, Captain Weir moved out, and later returned with warriors in close pursuit. A sustained heavy fire was kept up until nightfall. Corporal George H. King was wounded on the evening of the 25th. He later succumbed to that injury. That night, we built defensive works. When the shooting stopped, Reno came over and told Moylan to detail a non-commissioned officer and 6 volunteers for outpost duty. Sergeant Fowler declined to volunteer. Moylan then called on me, and I said I would go if men stepped forward. Privates Connor, Gilbert, Bancroft, McClurg, and Harris came forward. I reported to Reno for instructions. He told us to slip out one by one as the Sioux were still riding about. He ordered that 2 men stay awake at a time and talk to make sure of it, and that if we were fired on at dawn, we should scatter back to the breastworks. We carried out the duty exactly, and at daybreak, when the Sioux began firing, we withdrew to the main line in an orderly fashion. I was later praised for this service. The fighting started again at first light on the 26th and was most intense until about 10 o'clock. We saw them circling us by the hundreds. Their gunfire cut down all the sagebrush in front of us. On the 26th, the civilian packer F.C. Mann was killed behind the defensive works on Company A's line. He was discovered quite dead, hit in the temple while aiming his rifle. Having never left his post, our thirst grew unbearable. We chewed grass to create some moisture. Private Cornelius Cowley went mad from the thirst and we had no choice but to restrain him. After Benteen's countercharge, the calls for water became desperate. Finally, the officer said men could step forward. 19 soldiers volunteered, though the officers judged 12 to be enough. Each of us carried 2 canteens, and we also took several camp kettles. Sergeant Fowler was among the marksmen providing cover for the attempt. To get down, we sprinted across an open area of roughly 100 yards to reach a gully that hid us all the way to the riverbank. The opening of the gully was 20 yards from the water. We counted off in the ravine. Private Michael Madden of K Troop was the 3rd man to rush for water and was shot, his leg shattered, yet he managed to crawl back on his own. I was the 5th man to make the dash. The 1st man returned with a kettle, and we all drank our first water in 36 hours. Private James Wilbur of M Troop was the 4th and was wounded. After Madden was hit, there was a lull of about 30 minutes. We stayed in the ravine for approximately an hour altogether. About an hour and a half after we began, we made it back to the hilltop with water. Lieutenant Varnum was put in charge of guarding it. Dr. Henry R. Porter distributed it to the wounded, though there was not enough. As evening approached, the Indigenous fire lessened, and they pulled back. That night, the scout Fred Gerard, Bill Jackson, Lieutenant Charles DeRudio, and Private Tom O'Neill came in, which was a great relief, as we had believed them dead. On the morning of the 28th, I was assigned to help shoot some 20 wounded horses that were scattered on the bluffs. We then moved over to the Custer battlefield to enter the dead. The first body we came upon was that of Corporal John Foley of C Company. The next was Sergeant Butler. I helped bury men on the western side of the ridge, finishing with men from E Troop near the ravine. The smell made me ill, and I went to the river for a drink. When I think back on those days, the central facts are still the resolve of the men on the hill and the dreadful cost paid in the valley beneath. My part was only a minor one, yet the recollection of those who died and the common hardship of those who survived stays with me forever. Respectfully, Stanislaus Roy, Sergeant Company A, 7th Cavalry, retired. I trust this personal account provides you with a different view of the Battle of Little Bighorn. Final scene fades in from the main story. We see a slow, lingering shot of the handwritten final lines from the script displayed clearly on screen. My role was but a small part, yet the memory of those who fell and the shared ordeal of those who endured is with me always. Respectfully, Stanislaus Roy. The camera pulls back to reveal the pages resting on a simple, worn wooden table. A single, modern-day clear glass of water is set carefully beside it. The ambient sound of gentle wind returns. Narrator, voice is quieter now, reflective, almost a whisper. Sergeant Roy laid down his pen. He had told his truth. He gave us the bitter cold before the storm, the bones thrown in the river, the oblique fire from the timber, and the long, dry agony on the hill. Slow, solemn music begins, a single acoustic guitar or piano note lingering. But some truths echo louder in the silence they leave behind. The screen splits. On the left, a historical map of the battlefield with the hilltop circled. On the right, quick flashes of the key, haunting details from the story. Why did G Troop desecrate those graves? What did they think would happen? Where exactly were Bob Jackson and Billy Cross that day? And what did Roy see? In the face of Charlie Reynolds, standing alone with his pistol that he carried for the rest of his life. The split screen vanishes. We return to the glass of water beside the letter. A single drop condenses on the outside of the glass and trails slowly down. History is not just the loud events we all know. It is the quiet, unshakable memories of the people who were there, The small, brutal facts that don't make the monuments, but make the men. Final shot holds on the glass and the letter. The narrator's final lines are delivered with pointed, deliberate curiosity, directly inviting the viewer in. Narrator: So tell me in the comments, which detail from Roy's account stayed with you? Was it the curse of the graves, the 20 rounds fired in the timber, the 19 volunteers for water, or was it simply the grass chewed for spit? On a hilltop where time was measured in thirst, the music resolves with one final, thoughtful chord. The screen fades to black. After a 2-second pause, elegant minimalist end cards for your channel and other videos appear, accompanied by the soft, final sound of that distant wind